if you go online and search up what's a mentor, like you'll find a lot of arguments that as soon as you pay a mentor, you poison the relationship.
As a rule, if someone is going to be turned to for hashpah by many people in a systematic way, right? For the most part, the question has to start with the mushpah. Why are you asking for a free service? A good mashpia who knows you, who knows your growth, your arc of growth, who knows your sincerity, who knows your personality, can help you get comfortable inside. Yes, I know I'm Yirei Shamayim enough to do this work based on kach, and here's how I'm growing, and I can be at peace, and not carrying the burden all on my own. That's the role of a spiritual religious mentor.
Does the Ase L'cho Rav umbrella include this type of ongoing deep consultation, or was that really not part of the main Mashpia directive of the Rebbe?
If you're willing to do things differently than everyone, I have a suggestion for you. Offer money, because you're really not valuing yourself, and you're not valuing the other person's time at all. That's how it is.
Welcome everyone to the podcast Ase L'cho Rav. The purpose of this podcast is to bridge the gap between Rabbanim and Mashpiim and the Anash community. I am doing this with my friend Rabbi Bassman, who is the menahel of several Halacha and Chassidus projects.
Thank you, Levi. Baruch Hashem is a zchus that I have the exposure to many prestigious Rabbonim and Mashpiim who are often not given a proper platform. This podcast, Ase L'cho Rav, will give a voice to these Rabbonim and Mashpiim to share their thinking, their hashkafa, Chassidus, a deep dive into their backstory to help uplift the entire community.
Please consider subscribing, liking, commenting, and sharing, because that helps the algorithm bring it to more people, which changes lives and brings Mashiach.
In this new episode of Ase L'cho Rav, I had the zchus to speak to a friend of mine, Rabbi Fitz Rabin, and it fits right into the theme and the name of this podcast, Ase L'cho Rav. We have a very comprehensive, detailed discussion about what is a mashpia, what's the definition of a mashpia. Rabbi Fitz Rabin, in addition to him being an expert sefer with a Greisa Mumchias and writing the Alter Rebbe's Ksav, he's also a well-known life coach, helping a lot of people transform their lives. So we get into a detailed conversation about what is a life coach, what is a mashpia. And once we go there, we talk about the difference between a life coach and a therapist and a mashpia and what their roles are. And we do a deep dive into that. And should Mashpiyim be charging? We're working on a project, a platform for Mashpiyim, and he gives his opinion on if charging for the service of being a Mashpia, a mentor, if that is within the framework of the Kavon of the Rebbe in his Ase L'cho Rav system. Hope you enjoy. As always, if you have any feedback or suggestions, you can email me at rabbibassman@gmail.com. I look forward. Kol tov. Okay, so it's a big treat for us to bring in my friend and someone that I admire very, very much, Rabbi Fitz Rabin, who I've known for quite a few years, and he really fits into the title of this podcast, Ase L'cho Rav. He was trained as an expert sefer with a unique mahalach in writing the Alter Rebbe's Ksav, a big Talmud Chacham. He went to school to become a therapist, and then he became a life coach and a sort of mashpia of sorts. And I really would like to start with that topic in terms of the mashpia. And then Bez Hashem, we can get into more other side topics that we could probably bring for 5 hours, but we'll try to break this up. Today I don't know if people have patience for that long. So Yashakayach Rabbi Rabin.
It's great to see you, Bezalel, and it's so great to get to have this conversation with you. I'm grateful and excited, and coming with an open mind and an open heart, and trust that whatever it is that we explore today will make a difference for someone.
Bez Hashem, yeah. The we're at this can actually help inform me and a group of Mashpiim that are working on a platform that I think I might have mentioned to you some months back, which we're probably going to call something like My Mashpia. And Reb Farkash is kind of the one spearheading this project, where it's essentially there are some inherent struggles in the Mashpia system, and it's actually a good thing in the sense that Mashpiyim it's a good thing in the sense that people want to make the Mashpia system more sustainable. But essentially, people feel uncomfortable to approach Mashpiyim for something that's not super serious. So essentially, Mashpia conversations, based on our research, and based on talking to Mashpiyim, people feel they're kind of wasting the Mashpiyim's time, which they don't have a lot of, especially Mashpiyim that are like Zals of yeshivas, the bigger, more famous Mashpiyim. If there's 40, 50 graduates a year and they're all calling the same Mashpia, and yet times 10 from the last 10 years, times 20 from the last 20 years, these Mashpiyim are spending 4 or 5 hours, sometimes 10, 15 hours a week just talking to previous Talmidim, and this is like unpaid time. So the Mashpiyim feel pressured to do this, and like, where do you draw the line? What are the appropriate boundaries to use today's Lashonis? And so this is something that we've been thinking about for over 2 years, and you probably have been thinking about this for longer, in terms of, how can we make the Mashpia system better? So you're a life coach. Maybe tell us a little bit about your journey to becoming a life coach, and then maybe we can get into what are the differences between a life coach and a Mashpia, and maybe that can help us shed light on how we can improve the Mashpia system.
Beautiful. Okay. It definitely, first of all, I love the initiative, right? The Rebbe begged for folks to get a mashpia, to have a mashpia in their life, and literally begged, right? And it's so vital. Anyone who has a good mashpia can tell you that. I've heard from people who have a good mashpia. It is so vital. It is a critical support in people's lives on numerous levels, right? So what a great initiative to look at the bottleneck, right? And the challenges that people encounter in finding a great mashpia and having that support installed in their life so that they could really grow and thrive at the highest level. We all need people. We all need people. So I appreciate, the work that you're doing on this. I appreciate the opening up this question. I think this is so valuable and so crucial for so many people. I'll share briefly about my entry into, the world of professional coaching. I did go to school 10 years ago. I graduated. I got a master's in social work. So thinking that maybe I would become a therapist. I had benefited a lot from therapy myself. I have a big heart, I have a good mind, and I really thrive connecting with people and receiving people and seeing people and supporting them and championing for them. In reality, when I graduated, there were various challenges. I mean, first on a very technical level, if I would have entered the psychotherapeutic field then, the pay would have been very low. And so that was discouraging. A lot of paperwork, a lot of technicalities, which I have, by the way, since then. I have actually entered into that field and done some of that work, actually more recently. But at the time, it was really, I didn't want to do that, and not long thereafter, I encountered the world of coaching, and that really inspired me. It really inspired me, and I'll tell you why. Something that I personally was sensitive to, okay, was that you know, there's a way, you know, there's this is something subtle, but it's something that I'm sensitive to. Maybe I have sensitive nerve endings. Therapy really it means medicine, right? Chemotherapy, right? It's a therapeutic intervention, typically speaking, is like a medicine. Like, in other words, it implies the presence of illness or sickness. And then the therapy comes in to heal the illness or the sickness. And that is the context of the psychotherapeutic world. It implies mental illness, something wrong with you. There is a DSM, a diagnostic statistic manual, filled with hundreds of pages of diagnosis, various names for different sets of symptoms that people display. And these names kind of quantify, what is this illness called? And how do we recognize it based on a certain amount of symptoms? So it's really a very medical model, right? It's a kind of like taken from the medical world, but rather than addressing physical sickness, right? We're looking at mental, emotional, psychological, okay? And we're approaching it with the same approach like in medical, right? Like, there's the healthy person, and then there's if you're sick and you got the fever and the cough, or you broke your leg. There's all kinds of physical sickness, right? So similarly, the psychotherapeutic world approaches the inner world, the inner dimension of the person, in the same way. There's the healthy one, and then there's the sick one. And so they've come up with all of these diagnoses and observing all of these symptoms. And then, of course, is the attempted intervention, right? The various approaches that psychotherapy for the last 100+ years is attempting to develop to try to help the person. So in the subtext of the psychotherapeutic world, right, is that something's wrong with you, you're sick, or you're broken. And the psychotherapy is the promise of, we'll make you, we'll fix you, we'll heal you, right? We'll reinstate you to health. That whole context, right, I find needed at a certain point in a person's journey, possibly. But then there comes a point where the context of sickness fails to honor what's really going on. We all want to grow, and we all have a natural, instinctual desire for growth by virtue of the fact that we're alive. The most significant expression of chayas, of life, of vitality, is tenua, is movement, right? If you look at the inanimate world, it doesn't move, it doesn't grow. The moment you get into the world of tzomeach, right, the plant life, the plant life, what do you see? You see growth.
So let me just break it up to see that I'm following so far what you're saying. Sorry to interrupt, but
Sure.
I just it's hard for me to sit in a class for that long and hear the teacher speaking for more than a couple of minutes.
Go for it. I'm sure it's helpful to the listeners to break it up as well.
So would it be fair to characterize what you're saying, that if someone has, you agree there are the DSM legitimate list of scientifically proven mental illnesses, and do you accept that someone that has a serious mental illness, or even an intermediate level mental illness, or maybe even a low level mental illness, should be seeking the help of a mental health professional? And then this life coach is something that adds to that. Are you saying that, or am I misunderstanding?
I definitely agree with that. I wouldn't say, scientifically proven is a little bit of a dubious coin. I'll tell you why. Because the DSM, what it does is it observes a set of symptoms that a person is displaying and calls it a name. What exactly is the source of that set of symptoms is a whole different question, right? And all of the various interventions that are peer-reviewed and scientifically studied, right, based on statistics and testing, they're all attempts, right? They're all based on a theory, a suggestion of what is the root of this set of symptoms, and then there are attempts to address it, right? But for that reason, the field is constantly evolving, shifting, and changing because there isn't real scientifically proven.
And contrast that with the life coach
No,
world.
that's not a conscious life coaching. It's simply just to say that it's not like it's not the same observability, as physical sickness.
Right, but there's been billions of dollars of research. At least you get some sort of proven framework in the DSM and the scientific training, whereas the life coach is a little bit of the Wild West. I mean, would you agree with that
Yes.
or disagree? Meaning,
Yes.
there's probably not even $1 million of research into the
Right.
life coaching.
But let me tell you why I'm bringing out this point. The reason why I'm bringing out this point is because understanding where each of these come in, let's say, on a growth trajectory is important. So for some people, right, yes, they begin their journey really taking note of the various symptoms and approaching it through psychotherapy. And that is using the model, kind of the medical model, diagnosis, intervention, therapy, etc.
This podcast is sponsored by Koilel L'Loimdei Dach. Revolutionize your limud Chassidus. Join over 200 shluchim and anash that are taking their limud Chassidus to the next level. In Koilel L'Loimdei Dach, you have expert mashpiim, Reb Asher Farkash, Reb Yosef Klein, Reb Yitzchak Coffin, numerous guest mashpiim that learn Chassidus in a unique way, broken up by sugyas. Every 2-3 months, we take a new sugya and we dissect it from its haskalah to its avodah, level by level, for bringing on the sugya, discussing the avodah aspects of the sugya, the practical application of the sugya. Schedule a conversation today with the Menal Poyel or Paltiel and learn Chassidus like you have never done before. This podcast is sponsored by Koilel Rabbanei Chabad. Koilel Rabbanei Chabad is a community of experienced Rabbanim, aspiring Rabbanim, over 100 shluchim and anash from around the world, staying fresh in sugyas of community Rabbanos, learning over 8 to 10 hours a week, Gemara, Tur, Beis Yosef, Rosh Koilel, Sgan Rosh Koilel, senior poskim, follow-up, chavrusa placement, to be able to stay fresh in these sugyas, and to learn not just shimush and practical psak, but also shimush and the arum of Rabbanos. The Koilel has so far learned over the past 2 years the sugyas of Tvilas Kolim and Agalas Kolim, Hilchas Nida, and we're soon going to be starting Hilchas Mikvois, and you can join at any time. Schedule a conversation with the Rosh Koilel today at koilel.rabbanei-chabad.org. Okay. You think that's right or not necessarily? The way you're saying it sounds like some people take that approach. If you had a client that came to you that had a mental health illness, would you recommend that he supplement your coaching with a trained psychologist, or not necessarily?
Many of my clients have been in therapy, either before working with me or during working with me.
But if it's someone that like I heard all I don't want to, I want to go straight to Fitz Rabin, for life coaching, and I and I can't wake up in the morning and I'm just a complete mess and so on and so forth. Would you?
Generally speaking, they will never become my client. Because in order for me to work with someone, I get to know them first and see what is their level of readiness. What is their, where are they holding? Because it's got to make sense to do the work, right? So if there's something like that in place, it will become very obvious for me, for them, through the conversation, right, that they need something else. But that's an organic thing. It's not like I have a sign on my door, don't come here if you have a mental, you know what I'm saying? I just connect with people.
Right.
I don't know what you're coming in with. You could be coming in with addiction. You could be coming in with severe mental health. You could be coming in with you're a high level CEO. You're knocking on all cylinders. You want to be more present with your wife. It doesn't matter. I get to know you, right? Through that process, it becomes very clear if we're a fit and if this work makes sense. So I have yet, usually that just automatically reveals itself.
So what did we call before life coach became a common colloquial term, if that's the right word? What was was the life coach basically a Mashpia bardas that people approached some 20 years ago? Like who played this role? Is it a new
I think it's valuable to first finish this distinction.
Sorry, go ahead.
Right, the distinction that I began with, and then once that distinction is complete, we can move on. So the distinction that I'm pointing out is number one, and the reason why it's important, okay? Of course, psychotherapy can help people. It's helped me. It helps many people. And there often is a stage, right, where there's an opportunity for a person to shift the way they're relating to themselves. Look, once you heal to a certain level, and that level, by the way, there is no objective barometer for that. That's why this is important. It's important for people to be empowered to hear, okay, that there comes a point, right, where you kind of get to say, this avoida of me being broken and trying to get whole is complete. Because no one's ever there is no certificate. You are now whole. You are now complete. And on some level, every human being, as a human being, is a little broken. It reminds me of one of the songs from the 8th Day Band, right? If you're a little broken, then you're just like me. I think it's called Fighter or something, this song. So at that point, right, there are other avenues that can help a person fulfill on their dreams, achieve their goals, and maximize their potential that are not necessarily rooted in the whole context of sickness and brokenness. And that's important for people to be aware of. So first of all, for some people, it's moving from one stage to another stage in their own growth trajectory. Then the other reason why this is important is because you have a lot of people that want to grow and not necessarily need therapy, but because psychotherapy is the dominant go-to avenue for getting help, they go to psychotherapy. And then sometimes they get frustrated. It's not working. It's not helping. And the answer is right, because that's not what you need at all. But they don't know that there's anything else out there that's available to them, to empower them, to guide them, to support them in the growth that they are looking for. Many times people have come and asked me to coach them after going to therapy for a long time, really frustrated and disappointed with therapy, didn't do what it is that they need. So this is why this distinction is important. And, just to create the context fully, the world of coaching as I practice it and as I know it is not rooted in the notion of sickness or brokenness. It's rooted in the notion of life, of vitality, of growth, which is the natural expression of being alive and maximizing potential. So for me, I got into the life coaching space because it felt to me that as a coach and the coaches that I'm inspired by, people are seen much, much, much more the way the Rebbe saw people versus the way people are viewed very often in the super clinical world. I give you
it could be very much that the focus of the clinical world and what they do best is dealing with serious, legitimate issues. When people are sick, the people that are most frustrated in traditional therapies are those that are more looking for life enhancement, like the life coach. What you're proposing that life coaching is going to offer these people, and that would be the better fit for them.
Exactly. But a lot of people don't know that. That's why I beat this drum, right? It's not to hate on therapy in any way, because that's so important. And so many of us have needed it, and so many of us need it. And it helps in a lot of ways and different. But first of all, even for the person whom it helps, okay, what I found is, for myself and with others, it's like, who is the one who comes along and says, you don't have to think of yourself as sick anymore. You don't have to live inside of this construct anymore. You're not perfect. Obviously, no one is. You still struggle. Everyone does. But this context and this approach is complete. Who says that?
It sounds like Chassidus.
Oh, okay. So then I'm just echoing.
So going back to my previous question. So would it be fair to say that the good coaches, obviously it's a bit of the Wild West because there's no certification system, but the good coaches are essentially those in our world, those that would have been the really good mashpiim that are bari das and really get how to identify with the neshama and are, just are able to just transmit that in a real relatable way.
The good coaches and the good mashpia.
Yeah.
Not all mashpiyim are great, and not all coaches are great.
Correct, meaning the greatest of our mashpiyim were essentially these coaches that really understood the essence of life.
That's right.
And were able to transmit that and
knew how to uncover potential more than anything else.
Yeah.
Now, here's where we get into a real bottleneck, though, okay? Because it's one thing if the mashpia has that perspective, the perspective that is able to yank a person out, right, of like a distorted, self-obsessional, right, like view of himself, overly guilty, overly shameful, overly whatever, right, and just pull them out and be and remind them who they really are. And it's like tshuva law, the way the Rebbe would teach about it. You wake up to who you are, you take actions that reflect that, and you enjoy the results of that. And it's not a one-time fix, but like we all need constantly to remind each other and pick each other up. But that's one thing to get that, right? But it's another thing when someone really thrives most from getting that kind of input. Think of that as like the sun shining on a plant. Another human being that sees you for what you're capable of, that holds you in the light of possibility, that is always connected, sees you the way the Rebbe looked at you, and reminds you about that, right? And encourages you about that. It's like the sun shining on a plant, right? The plant needs a lot of sunshine to grow. So we all need, if a mashpia is just giving me spiritual guidance, should I let my son play non-Jewish video games when he goes for a play date to the neighbor, right? It's a one-time thing. It's a quick email, a quick text, or, bumping into your mashpia on the way out of the mix. But if we're talking about an influence in your life that inspires you, that elevates you, that reminds you of who you are, that encourages you, right, that you can really count on, that's a different kind of commitment. It's a different kind of commitment on the part of the mashpia, because he needs to be available for that and show up for that. He needs to really occupy a place in his heart and his mind, on his calendar. And it's also a different kind of commitment on the part of the mushpah, because it means I'm showing up not reactively, not only when there's a crisis, not only when I'm in big trouble. I'm showing up regularly. Regularly could be weekly, could be every 2 weeks, could be every month, could be every 3 months. But it's a kriyas benefesh to show up, to come to work on my life, to grow, to check in and see, the Kedron Tzedek style, right? So that is a whole nother game. That is a situation that I think that speaks to the bottleneck that you're talking about, where most mashpiyim are just not available for that. The whole construct of being paid for it is a new construct that is kind of just there were a few articles that were written about in the last couple of years online. So
obviously this is a hard question in terms of like, what did the Rebbe envisage? But when the Rebbe spoke about Ase L'cho Rav, and there were various levels of this, and so on and so forth, but does the Ase L'cho Rav umbrella include this type of ongoing deep consultation, or was that really not part of the main mashpia directive of the Rebbe?
Look, I don't know. It could be that the Rebbe assumed that a lot of this was happening between Ishis and Chazak, that this is happening at Chassidic Farbrengens, where there's vulnerability, where there's safety, where there's openness, where there's trust, where there's love, and people can come and get elevated, right? And people can look at each other and say, no, let's not play this low-level game of guilt and shame and Yetzer Hara and Nefesh Habamis and be busy with this guy. Let's, fight on this guy, and really inspire each other, really empower each other. But Farbrengens then have to happen frequently enough. Unfortunately, they don't. Right? There used to be Motzei Shabbos Farbrengens. There used to be Farbrengens don't I think that the average younger man is not Farbrengen regularly per se. And number two, the quality of Farbrengens is unfortunately not there. Right? You can
even those many Farbrengens is generally a Mashpia speaking, giving a speech for 3 hours with some breaks for Nagunim.
But there's that kind of Farbrengen, but then there's a Farbrengen where guys sit around.
Right.
But I'm saying in both cases, so when it's speeches and lectures, it's for sure not this. It's good information, it's good material, maybe a little bit inspiring, but it's not the same. And then when guys are sitting around together, unfortunately, for the most part, I mean, I've been at Farbrengens where I sat for 2-3 hours and literally heard, I've seen eating, drinking, jokes, putting each other down, and some repeating some of the most old and worn out stories that have basically become meaningless recently because they're just repeated so much and never even really brought home in a personal way. And then the one person that tries to share something of substance or something of meaning is usually shut down or ridiculed. So this is it could be that in the Rebbe's vision, Farbrengens is meant to play a massive role in this whole thing, and that's not happening. It could be that it could be that in the Rebbe's vision, the Mashpia was meant to have more of an ongoing, active role in a person's life. I don't know the answer to that question.
Hey, if you're listening right now and you've been feeling stuck, like you're running in circles or living on autopilot, I want to invite you to something different. I call it coaching out of the matrix, and it's about breaking free from the patterns, fears, and false limits that break you from living fully as the person God created you to be. My approach is holistic. We work on mindset, emotions, physical well-being, and a deeper spiritual identity so the change lasts. And here's the twist. You only pay if you're satisfied with the session, because I believe in results, not hype. If you're ready for a shift, email me at leviholisticcoach@gmail.com and let's see what opens up for you. That's leviholisticcoach@gmail.com. Coaching out of the matrix. Your new chapter starts right here. Enjoy the rest of the video. Hey, are you looking for top talent without the crazy costs? Well, you're in good luck, because I'm advising at Talent Sam. They help companies hire amazing people from South Africa for roles like customer success, finance, operations, marketing, and sales. All and more at around 70% less than Western employee cost. They can find the right person in days with no recruitment fee, and they handle all HR, tech, and compliance. If that sounds like something you or someone you know could use, let me know and I'll connect you. Thank you. Enjoy the rest of the video.
Do you think it's possible the Rebbe wanted us to figure this out on our own? Meaning, because if you look at the material of the Sichos, it's pretty like Teresh B'chsav. There's not a lot of, this isn't fleshed out the way you're describing.
Whether he wanted us to or not is irrelevant, because guess what? Here we are, and we have to.
Right. So the conundrum becomes, and I guess, let's call it this deep level mashpia that you speak to him once a month for a half hour, and he gets to know you, for ongoing, for life. So most mashpiyim that I speak to, and Rabbi Farkash there is pushback, but they are proposing a paid for system where people invest in this, not necessarily coaching level dollars and not $500 an hour, but some sort of compensation for mashpiyim that are good to get paid and to have this a formal relationship. Do you see a distinction between the coaching model and this mashpia model? With these two, let's assume 3 years down the line, this higher level, deeper level, ongoing mashpia relationship is adapted by Anash. would you see that as being something different from coaching? From a Chassidische young man?
That's a very interesting question. It could be different and it could not be different. That depends on a lot of factors. For example, as a coach, one of the things I do is help people with their gashmis reality, helping them make money, helping them get better at sales, helping them get better at putting themselves out there in the world and not hiding in fear. The whole domain of gashmis, right? But we work on it through the ruchnis, right? Through inner things, but also through the question of what actions need to be taken. But like the actions are like the guf, but the attitude, right, and the inner positionality is like the neshama. So will a mashpia necessarily help someone with that? Can they? Are they familiar enough? I don't know. That's going to be depending on how talented that mashpia is, how confident he is, how much experience he has, and the mushpa. Another question is sometimes I help people also with things that do touch on the psychotherapeutic domain. Sometimes people need to process something in a more of a psychotherapeutic way. Maybe it's something from their past, or is every mashpia kind of like set up for that? I don't know. Some are probably. Maybe they've done a lot of work on themselves. Maybe they've read some books, right? Maybe they've experienced therapy. Maybe they've even done something like that, right? I don't know. Then there's the question also of pashat time, right? Is the half hour once a month sufficiently supportive for what the person is bringing in? Maybe it is, right? For some people, it may be. For other people, it will not be. So there's really a lot of different factors over here. I don't know that it does have to be one big mishmash. Having a mashpia, if only for a conversation for a half hour every month on the calendar, can be extremely edifying, grounding. You know that you have someone to talk to. You have a question comes up in your marriage, a question comes up in your chinuch, a question comes up in your career choice. You know you have, okay, at the end of this month, I'm talking to my mashpia, I'm writing this down, right? This is going to be a question. So it's invaluable. It will be invaluable regardless. Will it adequately do what a great life coach can do, being involved in your life, over a half a year or a year or 2 years? I don't know. That will depend on the mashpia, his skill level. That will depend on the mushpa and what he needs. And that will depend on the time. All of those factors will come into play. Regardless, what you're suggesting will be extremely beneficial for most people.
Let me dig a little bit further into the training process, because I think it touches upon the two distinctions you made between a potential mashpia and a coach, if I'm understanding correctly. One is that you're saying the primary focus, or definitely an important secondary focus, of a coach is on practical physical skill sets, and like you said, fundraising and skill and putting yourself out there, and then also potentially some of the psychological piece. So for a coach that doesn't have...
Sorry, let me just interrupt you. But coaching b'derech klal, okay, is associated with what are your dreams and desires, fully actualizing your potential, right, and achieving goals. Those could be inner goals, presence, peace, love in your marriage, as in your workplace, in the world, right? Those could be outer goals. It could be actualizing on potential, sharing your message. But b'derech klal, it's associated with creating your future, achieving your goals, fulfilling your dreams, actualizing your potential.
Right.
The way I think that what you're talking about in terms of a mashpia, right? I think that there's a place. So let's just try to do it like this, okay? Let's just say the therapeutic process is to help heal illness and oftentimes resolve past issues. Let's just say a coach primary, and again, there's overlap, right? We're generalizing, but let's just try to create some semblance of definition here. Let's just say a coach is really about achieving your goals, fulfilling your dreams, fullness of self-expression, and actualizing potential. Future. Present, future. I think that there's also something right in the middle that I think is what the Rebbe had in mind when he talked about Ase L'cho Rav. And again, not that it can't bleed over, but the way it occurs to me, right, is really religious, spiritual mentorship. What's right for me? Should I use the arrows in Crown Heights or not? What's right for me? What's right for my family? What's right for my kids? What do I tell my kids if I don't use the arrows, but I'm passing by all the people pushing the stroller? Something comes up in the domain of Taras HaMishpacha. One spouse wants this, the other spouse wants it. It's a spiritual, religious question that has a very profound impact on your quality of life, on your peace, on your well-being, on your thriving. Where do I go? How do I navigate? How do I negotiate that? Now, again, this is not to say it's the exclusion of anything else. If you're in a relationship with someone and they're weighing in on your spiritual, religious growth, right? They better know you. And there better be safety and trust in the relationship, or else it's just disconnected input, right? So obviously they know you. Obviously someone who you trust, who inspires you, who you look up to, who knows some of your history, and all of that rapport and that safety and that trust and that relationship help also psychologically and emotionally. You feel less alone. You feel seen. You feel believed in. All that is part of it. And again, in some cases, could even bleed into other things. But I do think that that's right there in the middle. It's a pillar that may be the bulk of what the Rebbe was talking about, not to the exclusion
Spiritual
of
coaching versus life skill coaching.
And I would say spiritual religious.
Right.
And again, it's not to the exclusion of anything else, Vitzal, right?
There's overlap, obviously.
There's overlap of all of these. A therapist could operate as a coach, and a Mashpia can sometimes operate as a therapist if he's good. And there's overlap. There's no, it's not like you're not allowed to ever cross over any of these boundaries. But if we need to talk in a meaningful way about what each of these represent, I think it's fair. I'll tell you, I'll share with you personally from my own life. I've been a sofer for 25 years. I've been teaching sofrim for the last 10 years. You can't even imagine the levels of guilt and shame that I've been privy to in my relationship with Safros and in those who have taught Safros around, am I Yirei Shamayim enough? Am I in integrity enough to do this work? Am I a fraud? Am I a con? People are coming and buying my stuff. They think I'm Yirei Shamayim. They think I'm Erla. But I know I have this addiction. I have this weakness. I have this, thing that I don't do, right? I know that I have this in my past and these sfeikis and amuna and these. It's the gamut. Sofrim are very sincere people. And they're called to this holy work. And every flaw of theirs, big or small, especially big,
Big magnifying glass.
What's that?
Big magnifying glass.
Big. Where do they go to? Their therapist? Their therapist is going to tell them about the inyonim of Yirei Shamayim. Their therapist is going to teach them about how to be erlich. And where are they going to go to? I have needed good mashpiyim that I could trust to give me this religious spiritual guidance. Teach me what's Yirei Shamayim. How do I know if I am it or not? Obviously, it's a mountain with no top. But if I don't have any minimal definition, I can never be at peace. Is a sofer always supposed to be miserable? Is a sofer always supposed to be self-doubting and plagued with guilt? This is just an example. It's one example that's very dominant in my world, right? I'm just saying it's an example. That's a good mashpia who knows you, who knows your growth, your arc of growth, who knows your sincerity, who knows your personality, can help you get comfortable inside. Yes, I know I'm Yirei Shamayim enough to do this work based on kach v'kach v'kach, and here's how I'm growing, and I can be at peace and not carrying the burden all on my own. That's the role of a spiritual religious mentor. So that's an example, but I've already mentioned a bunch of examples in the last 10 minutes. I think that this is huge. This is not just a small little thing. we are firmly Yidden or Chassidim. These kinds of questions occupy a massive part of our well-being.
In terms of developing skill sets, if you had to guesstimate a percentage in these latter two roles of life coach and mashpia, let's assume we have at least between the two of us, some sort of working definition for this conversation. Would you say is it an 80-20 in terms of inborn talent versus training? Or how would you break it up in terms of it? And then I guess whatever percentage is training, where does the training, where can you get training to be a mashpia and to be a life coach that you would recommend?
Well, just explain the question, please, again. What do you mean by the 80-20? What exactly are you asking?
So the good mashpia and the good life, so you have good mashpia and good life coaches. What was the recipe to becoming that good mashpia and good life coach? Is it 80%? Tell me if you think I'm right or wrong. I think it's great majority is inborn skill sets and just the way your nefesh works and your life experiences. And then there is obviously some, you've been coached up to become, experience and become even better. So is it mostly inborn talent? Like certain people are not cut out to do it, and then there's a little bit of training involved, or maybe very little training? Or is it, person can really learn to become a really good life coach and a really good mashpia, and it doesn't, you don't need to be, it doesn't have to be inborn.
It's a beautiful question. I think that, first of all, again, in light of the distinction that I'm making, I think that mashpia in the domain of spiritual and religious matters, Poshet, it requires tremendous it requires Yir Shemayim, and also having good mechanchim yourself. Meaning, if you're going to be a mashpia, right, you need to have had very good Chassidic influences who taught you like the right hashkafas, the right way of taking in Chassidic values, the right way of living with Chassidus. Because there's a lot of that stuff is, unfortunately, you have like a lot of people that are very sincere and maybe even very knowledgeable in text, but they haven't necessarily been formed with the Torah Shabbat of Chassidus and of Chassidim. So there's an over intensity or over rigidity, a thing that is not necessarily so conducive for other people's growth. So I think that when it comes to Hashpah, that's definitely a unique thing that's needed, is that you have a good Mashpia yourself, you have good Hashpah, Yir Shemayim influences, Chassidic influences, right? That's important, and I think anyone can achieve that. I think anyone can get that, can learn that. That being said, whether it's a Mashpia, whether it's a life coach, I absolutely believe that there are people that have a natural gift for it, which is going to make them better. I don't think it's any different than Safros. Okay, I teach Seifrim. Those who have a natural gift, a natural flair, a natural sense of art, and just good hands will do better. But the craft of Safros can absolutely be taught, absolutely be learned, and performed well. And I think it's the same thing. There are obviously some people that are gifted. They're more gifted. The quality of their insight and the quality of their awareness is more refined and broader, and let's say more sensitive nerve endings spiritually and psychologically and emotionally. So, that's a gift. But it's not. I would not say it's 80% gift. I would say to the contrary, it's 80% work. What does that work look like? I mean, I think for a coach, it's getting coached. Absolutely getting coached, because it's through that you really learn experientially what's involved in what makes you thrive, what makes you light up, right? And when you learn that through experience, you're much better able to pass that on. Same thing with Hashpah. Getting good Hashpah is going to really inform you of what really works. And of course there are books. Of course there are books and audios and podcasts, and And a lot of stuff out there. I will just say one thing on a skill level, both require tremendous love. You must love another Jew. You must love another Jew. You must be able to see past labels about that person from others, or even labels about that person from that person themselves. Okay, I like to say, I don't believe people, I believe in people.
Someone came over to me on Shabbos. One of the hats I wear is a rabbi / Rav. So people ask me shilas, and sometimes I know the answer, sometimes I don't. But someone's like, how much does Hashem hate me because I'm lenient and tear toilet paper on Shabbos? So we spent 10 minutes for bringing about his question. But anyway, to give an example.
That love is love. You're born with it. Some people, maybe maybe they're born with a more loving heart, and maybe they had more loving influences in their life. But of course, we could all learn how to love. Of course, we could all learn how to love. Another high-level skill that is crucial in coaching is question. Very often in coaching, questions are more of a facilitative tool. Questions are used more than answers. Through the question allows the person to drop a notch deeper in themselves and come to a place of greater clarity and truth inside. Because very often people are on the surface. They're asking, they're struggling or they're stuck because they're stuck in the surface and their ego or their head. But really underneath, they know the answer. They know but they're scared. They're not confident enough. They're hesitant. So questions help a lot. And you can get really good at asking questions. Listening is a skill, right? People have a hard time listening in silence. These are skills that are very much, essential to coaching space. They're not necessarily natural for a lot of people. We like to fill up the space with talking. I love talking.
From podcast number 1 to podcast 17, I think if you listen, I've gotten a little better at listening.
Congratulations.
I'm learning.
So you've answered your own question. Love, listening, questions. These are the most powerful skill sets in the coaching world. And then there are more, but these are the most powerful. And these can all be learned. They can all be learned.
So I have at least 2 more questions in this coaching arena, and there is another subject that I want to get to. So let's see if we can at least wrap a bow on this conversation, because I can go on with you for 3 more hours on this.
Absolutely.
But so I've actually been approached in the last 18 months by a handful of coaches, like selling me their services. I'm running different projects and this and that. You could need life coaching. So to me, and they had that initial conversation, and then basically I couldn't afford it. But one of what it seemed like from these life coaches was that the primary offering was spend 6 months with me, maybe a little longer, maybe a little shorter, for whatever it is, $10,000, and we're going to change your life. So, and then it's kind of like it's over. You were talking about how things continue on and on and on and on. I guess I'm just want to use. So tell me if that would that be a correct generalization, that coaching primarily is like a project-based coaching, and that's usually the way it is. And then to contrast that with our spiritual growth Mashpia, do you see that as also a project-based therapy or sessions, or is that just ongoing spiritual growth, which is endless?
Beautiful question. The way I see it, first of all, when it comes to spiritual religious growth, I do think it's a mountain with no top, right? And I think that when it comes to growth in other ways as well, also, look, I'm a sofer for 25 years. I like to call myself like a Stam scribe and soul scribe. Okay, there's so many things that I can use. So Safra serves as a metaphor for about life.
And then you're a Balmanagan also, so that's another pen, right? The pen of the
25 years I'm writing. Baruch Hashem, the Eibishter has helped me to write, to achieve a very high level of craftsmanship, of skill in writing the author of his song. And I'm very, very grateful for the people who hire me to write down for them. It's something that's very, very special and very precious. Guess what? Till today, when I see a cipher's work, and I see anything in that cipher's work that's lacking in mine, I want to know, what are they doing? I want to watch them write. I want to see the position of their body in their chair. I want to see how they hold that quill and which fingers are where and how far away from the tip. I want to know which ink they're using. I want to know the humidity in the room. Which parchment are they using, right? I want to know exactly how are they moving their fingers, exactly what they're doing. Well, at 25 years, I'm like the king. People coming to me, seasoned soifrim are coming to me to learn. If you want to really grow at something, and if you're passionate about something, and you want to always experience the fullness of life, you're always looking to learn. You're always looking to grow. So doesn't necessarily, and I think of the same thing in terms of the life coaching space, right? I can tell you, for me, there have been a lot of changes for me over the years. At some point, I was getting coached every week. At another point, I was getting coached every 2 weeks. At another point, every 3 weeks. At another point, I only was working with my Mashpia. And that was once every couple months, but I would email him more regularly.
Did you pay? Do you pay your
Yes,
Mashpia
absolutely. Yes.
per session, or it's like the batonis before Pesach?
No, per session. But I don't approach anyone who I want to really receive from without an offer to pay, because that's when they know you're serious. I mean, look, you can ask for a matnas chinam from anyone. If you're lucky, you'll get it, but you're not going to get it consistently. You're not going to get it reliably. If you want them to take you seriously and to believe and invest in you, you got to show them that you're not fooling around. Especially if you're reaching out to people who are extremely busy and extremely accomplished, great talmidei chachamim or great teachers, etc., etc. It's just not going to happen. I mean, you can ask. There's nothing wrong with asking for a freebie, and you'll be lucky if you get it. Although I have heard stories from people who have asked and not gotten it. And then when they offer money, the Mashpia is like, no, chas v'shalom, I'll never take money. Go figure. But anyway, but coming back to what I'm saying, the point is that I think that learning never ends, like they say in camp. In the similar way, whether it's the role of a Mashpia, whether it's the role of a coach, never ends. What form it takes, that can evolve and change, and it can be more frequent and less frequent, and it can pause for a tkufa while you integrate things, and it's fine. It doesn't have to take any particular form. But as a rule, I see these things as being lifelong growing.
This podcast is sponsored by Smichas Chaver Chabad, Halacha U and Women's Halacha Circle, in over 100 communities around the world. Halacha for everyone. Halacha curriculum that we provide for your community to teach the halachas, to engage people in halacha, to make halacha interesting. We have Smichas Chaver Chabad for Anash communities. For those that have a yeshiva background, we have Halacha U, which are advanced courses being taught in Chabad houses around the world. For those that don't have a yeshiva background but want serious, roll up your sleeve learning, super engaging, take them through the journey of the halacha down to the super, super practical. Every 6 months is a new topic. After Pesach, we are starting the sugya of workplace halachas, the laws of ribis, the laws of baltolin, paying your workers on time, and the laws of yichud. Fascinating sugyas. We have it on various levels for those that have a yeshiva background, those that don't have a yeshiva background, for women as well. Check out scpchabad.org or halachayu.org. Click join to schedule a meeting with me to learn more. This podcast is sponsored by Koilel Aliba de Hilchasa, a brand new Koilel with the Rosh Koilel, Rav Yaakov Goldstein, Sgan Rosh Koilel, Rav Menachem Rottenberg, Menal Poyel, Rav Mendel Weisfish, all active, experienced Moira Hayra, follows an 8-year syllabus. Every 6 months is a new topic, broken up into subtopics. Until Pesach, we're learning the halachas of Hilchas Avelus and Bikur Cholim. After Pesach, we're learning workplace halacha, Hilchas Ribis, Hilchas Baltolin, and Hilchas Yichud. It's a serious learning Gemara, Shulchan Aruch inside. 3 hours a week of Chavrusa learning. Help find you a Chavrusa, set up a Chavrusa. And then there's 2 in-depth shiurim per week, 2 live shiurim per week. And it's serious learning. Someone that has a busy schedule, 3 to 5 hours a week. Schedule a conversation with the Manal Poyel today at koilalad.com. Wow, it's like if someone when someone interviews me on a podcast and they're like, Batala, what's your message to the world? Makes me feel very important being asked that question. But like if I thought about it, what's my message to the world? So I think that like everything that I'm working on is that like many people grow up thinking that basically you grow up cheder, mesifta, yeshiva, and then you're there to give to the world. But I was making the argument that no, when you're 20 and 30 and 40, your exponential growth is possible, and continued serious growth is possible for adults. That would be my on all different levels. So along the lines of what you're saying, it is continuous. Let me bring up a challenge, a challenge that I get from serious people, and I had myself as well, that really gives me a struggle with creating this my Mashpia. It's not necessarily what we're going to call it, but like this concept, and really working with Mashpiim to figure this out. So I had a Mashpia who I would talk to a lot. I have a lot of issues, and he was patient, and then we
In the club.
and we worked through a lot of stuff, and I can talk a lot also, and he was a good listener, and he was like a consultant, Mashpia, and and then things, and I also have a therapist, and I have a psychologist, and a psychiatrist, v'chulu. So it was like he was part of my team. He was like my Mashpia, so he didn't get paid. And like my Mashpia never asked me for money, and it was like 20 minutes here, 20 minutes there for like past 30 years. Not 30 years, 20 years. And I'm really good at asking people for advice. So I milked the Mashpia thing well, and I was super appreciative for these people, and they were lifelong mentors. If you go online and search up what's a mentor, like you'll find a lot of arguments that as soon as you pay a mentor, you poison the relationship. And there's a lot of that. You can look into it. So, and I had that experience. This Mashpia of mine, who I spoke to maybe for 2 or 3 years, he suddenly said, Betzalel, I think we need to take this to a session. And I wasn't 100% sure what he meant, but I had assumed he said, now we need to turn this into a paid session. And I love the guy. I see him, I'll give him a big hug, but that just poisoned the whole relationship. He sent me a $200 bill for a $50 50-minute session. Maybe it was a $300 bill. I was like, that's it. So I guess I'm asking this from like 2 different vantage points. One, all this talk online about the mentor, which I much more associated with the Mashpia category. You're doing the spiritual ruchniistic thing, where that mentor-mentee relationship turning into something paid. It's more like the mentor is someone that's maybe he's retired and he has a little more time, and he was mentored by his mentor for free, and he's now mentoring the next generation. So a strong pushback can be made, and I had this in my personal experience, where bringing money into this relationship could really be like, it could ruin it.
Okay, are you open to me asking you some questions about that?
Sure.
So why didn't you offer him money from the beginning? You go to your therapist, you pay him. You go to your psychiatrist, you pay him. This is just a possible context. Because you're a martyr doing your work for free, therefore there's an expectation that the guy who you want to help you should also do it for free. He should pay for your martyrdom. And then when he turns around and says, hey, wait a second, I need a few dollars for this, you're asking me too much, then you get turned off. I just want to point this out. This is, I know this is, maybe you'll cut this out of the episode, but I want to point out this is a perspective, right, where there's a lack of personal responsibility on the part of the mushpa to begin with. Why would I approach anyone who I take seriously and who I value their time and their input, which means they're an achieved, accomplished person, and expect them to give me their time for free? I'm not talking about a once in a while occasional thing. You reach out to someone and say, please, could I talk to you for 15 minutes? Why would I ever do that? It's almost like it's below my own dignity. It's below my own dignity. Why would I ever do that? If he says to me, no, don't pay me. Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. It's very, very nice. But it's below my own dignity to turn to someone who I value and look up to and want their time and their expertise, and somehow, implicitly or explicitly, expect it to come for free. It's below my own dignity, and it devalues my own self-concept, to be honest.
So I don't disagree with you at all logically. I think what you're saying makes a lot of sense, and I think and it's sound. Where I would say Chassidim would struggle with this argument is that this is not, we don't have training in this, meaning the concept of Mashpia, when I don't think Reb Mendel Fuddefas, when anyone called him for their monthly session, no one ever gave him a check. This was never in our vocabulary of this being a paid position. I think I'm giving you the devil's advocate of the pushback, the tremendous pushback that some have given. It's a minority. People realize the problem, but it's almost like we're perverting something.
No, but we're looking at it from the wrong perspective, in my opinion. First of all, we're not in those times. We're not, right? We had all kinds of Chassidim all around, and the Rebbe was present and everything. We're in a different time. But leaving that aside for a second, there's the question of, should a Mashpia charge? And when you ask the question from that angle, right, it's like, well, I don't charge. And so it becomes this kind of domino effect, right? No one's allowed to charge because I don't charge. So it all starts, I don't charge, therefore you're not allowed to charge me. If you do charge me, then I'm upset with you, relationships got soured. And it's like, it all starts with my own, I don't charge, my own, self-righteousness. I don't charge, but really it's like, okay, that's very nice. Can you afford not to charge? Okay, great. You can afford not to charge. He can. So that's the first thing we have to look at is, where is forget about the Mashpia charging, right? It's basically an irresponsible starting point in the conversation. Forget about Mashpia charging. Let's talk about the mushpa paying. If I am sitting across someone who wants quality hashpah and help, which takes time and expertise, I want to know, why are you asking for that for free? That's what I want to know. If he's going to tell me, oh, I'm asking it for free because everyone always asks it for free. Okay, well, are you willing to maybe do things a little differently than everyone? No. Okay, so go ahead and ask for free. If you're willing to do things differently than everyone, I have a suggestion for you. Offer money, because you're really not valuing yourself and you're not valuing the other person's time at all. That's how it is. So I think we have to start the conversation from the mushpa, not from the mashpia. Now, if some mushpa screams and yells and says, I will absolutely not pay for someone to be a mashpia, no problem. So go find your mashpia that's willing to help you without pay. It's fine. You don't have to do it this way, right? And some people will do it. But if we're having a new conversation about hashpah, and we're looking at it from a place where the mushpa takes personal responsibility for the fact that they're making a request on someone else, for the fact that they don't know how many other people that mashpia is helping for free. You have no idea. You have no idea how much chesed that mashpia does, how much free things he does. It's not your business to judge. who he should help and how much he helps for free and not for free. It's completely asinine. It's none of your business. So I think the conversation has to start from the place of the mushpa. The mushpa has to become willing to say, this is important to me. I want the mashpia to understand that I am serious about this. I want the mashpia to give me his attention. And I wouldn't do that for someone else if there was absolutely no skin in the game. You know what? And Bassal, if someone would do that for someone else, God bless him. I question highly how many people he would do that for and how many people he could do that for before it all collapses. I think it's not honest. Most people won't and can't do that for too long for too many people. And what ends up happening is it does collapse. So you start avoiding the guy's calls. You start picking up and doing it very short, and everything gets trimmed down, trimmed down, trimmed down. It all collapses. This is not true for everyone. But it's, as a rule, if someone is going to be turned to for hashpah by many people in a systematic way, right? For the most part, the question has to start with the mushpa. Why are you asking for a free service? And I want to go even more. It's not only because the mashpia needs to be compensated for his time. First of all, it's to indicate to the mashpia that the mushpa is serious. Number one, changes the relationship. Number two, it's for the mushpa to take himself seriously and be self-respecting. Again, we're not talking about the occasional request. So I think that if we're talking about upgrading the system, it's not just a lack of mashpiyim, a shortage of mashpiyim, or a shortage of mashpiyim's time, right? In other words, there's a way of looking at the payment that's a b'diavad. Like, what are you going to do? There's a limit of mashpiyim. There's a limit of time. They have to be paid. That's one direction, right? And then you can say, well, they were never paid, and that's one exploit. There's another side to this, which I think is going to be the key to up-leveling and upgrading the whole context of hashpah and the experience of receiving hashpah and what it does in people's lives. And that is for the mushpa to begin questioning, why is this something that he would even want for free? And if the answer is because I would give it for free, okay, it's only going to work so long. It's only going to last so much. And even that, by the way, is also a very interesting question. Why would you do it for free? And if there are good reasons for it, okay, I can appreciate that. But it will only last so long. That's the reality. It will only last so long. So to summarize, yeah, we got to come at this question from if you're asking me, I'm offering a perspective in which we come at the question from the place of the mushpa. Then, b'derech l'meila, once a mushpa is in a place of personal responsibility, respecting themselves, understanding that if they pay something in, they're going to be more. They're going to be more. They're paying attention a little more. It's taking up more of a space in their life. Then from there, the mushpa also understands that the mashpia is also a person, also has needs. It comes a little bit more intuitively. Why it was always free, I don't know. Maybe it was different. Maybe it was different in the olden days. I don't know. I don't think it's a useful question.
Hey, Reb Fitz, this has been a tremendous conversation. I've learned myself a lot, and I hope the listeners of Ase L'cho Rav have taken chizuk about different madregas, inspire them to think more deeply about the concept of mentorship on a Chassidic and practical level. What would be your closing thoughts for the community of Ase L'cho Rav? Or statement for the world, Rabbi Rabin?
I have no idea. I have no ask me a question. I don't have a statement. I mean, keep growing. I don't know. I don't have a statement. Didn't prepare a statement.
What would be your closing thoughts on this conversation?
Um, my closing thoughts would be, in the context of this particular conversation, is take yourself seriously by being ready to pay for something that you need and that you want, and that you are making a request or demand on someone else for. Does that mean that you have to pay with money? Not necessarily. There may be other ways. But the degree to which you put yourself on the hook, and the degree to which you really recognize that succumt der garnished, no one owes you anything, and that you take the responsibility for the initiative of moving your life forward and growing, the more you will grow, the more you will thrive, the more you will get out of anything that a Mashpia gives you.
Okay, well,
That's just the conclusion of this, of this piece.
well, on that note, thank you very much for giving to us today, and the Eibishter should bench you with Kayach to continue giving and growing together with all your Talmidim. And I hope you'll be mezaka us with a couple more conversations like this, because I have so much more I want to pick your brain about. And you should have a good gebench year.
Amen. Gamatem. I appreciate this conversation. I appreciate the opportunity to think these things through together, and look forward to a future conversation about any other topics that would be interesting or useful. And I wish you and all the listenership, even though they'll be listening to this deep in the year, and thank you for the work that you do on behalf of the Klal, with the Kollel, Rabbi Chabad, and all the initiatives that you have been spearheading, and the profound impact that's making on Klal Yisrael. So, thank you.
Yasher Kayach, thank you very much. All the best.
Hey, are you looking for Chassidic stories to say to your kids by bedtime, or for Malava Malka about 10 minutes? Well, you're in luck, because there's a new podcast called Chassidic Stories by Eden Hanoka. Check it out. It'll be in the description. Hey, I hope you enjoyed listening to our podcast. Don't forget to subscribe, like, comment, and share to help bring it to more people, which brings Mashiach. And if you want coaching that actually shifts you, just reach out to me at leviholisticcoach@gmail.com. See you in the next video.